Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Laura Musica Show. I'm Laura Musica, founder, president, and CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. I'm traveling, so we don't have the video component this week if you're looking for it, but we do have the audio component, and we're going to do our very first hot take for you. We're going to cover this week's vice presidential debate and Melania Trump's pro-abortion stance. Now, last Tuesday night was the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, and the agendas and debate styles could not have been more different. Overall, I thought J.D. Vance was a masterful debater, and it seemed like most of social media agreed with me on both sides of the aisle, right? And Tim Walz seemed kind of frightened and a bit wordy, but again, that's just my opinion. Inevitably, the moderators at one point turned the conversation to abortion, and I thought to myself, oh boy, here we go. Let me go ahead and play a clip for you of that portion of the debate really quickly.
This issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, two wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you, about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Now, Walz predictably defended unfettered abortion access through all 9 months of pregnancy and lied about his state's policy on after-birth abortion, namely the idea that Minnesota isn't required to provide life-sustaining care to infants after a botched abortion. And I was pleased that Vance called him out on it. It was also predictable that Walz used the rare cases of rape, incest, and life of the mother to defend abortion on demand. I really wish Vance would have reminded people that in all 50 states, women still have access to emergency care during pregnancy, emergency early delivery, ectopic pregnancy treatment, and miscarriage management. And these things are not abortions. It's always been seen that way in ethics and medicine. Walz brought up, for example, the recent case of Amber Thurman, who tragically died in Georgia after complications from the chemical abortion regimen. He blamed Georgia's restrictive abortion law as to why Amber died, and they couldn't do an emergency D&C to prevent the sepsis that eventually set in. However, that's not really the true story. Her baby at one point, unfortunately, sadly, had already passed, and physicians had the option to do an emergency D&C much sooner to prevent complications from sepsis. But they waited too long and really committed medical malpractice. Also, this is just the nature of chemical abortion. A lot of women end up in the ER from sepsis. This is the reality and one of the risks of the most prevalent form of abortion in America today, and we need to get the word out about it. Now, when it was time for Vance's turn to present his case on life, he started out with the beautiful idea that we indeed had to win the hearts of the American people on this issue and show our love and support to mothers facing an unexpected pregnancy. He also said that he was proud to defend innocent human life. And I remember him making a motion towards his chest at one point, looking like he was going to, put his hand over his heart. Maybe it was just me, but that's kind of what I saw. I love that entire bit. I really love that entire sentiment. And it showed the country how we are not just, pro-baby, but we are pro-woman and pro-love. We can love them both and treat them both with love and respect, right? I was also thrilled when he, a bit later, called out the Democrats on their pro-late-term abortion position. And yes, folks, late-term abortion does happen in this country by the thousands every single year. But what I didn't like was this states' rights argument that Trump and the Republicans have settled on as of late. So Vance, again, was kind of putting forth the idea that every state, per the Dobbs decision, the decision that overturned Roe versus Wade and sent it back into the hands of the people, letting states decide, right, that states should be able to choose their values and therefore their abortion laws. Yes, it is better that the abortion issue is back in the hands of the people rather than stuck in a constitutional deep freeze under Roe v. Wade, right? It's a step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's not the end game. The lives of human beings should never be subject to a mere vote. So what this all tells me is that we have more work to do. We must be educating people better on this issue and making the case for personhood for the unborn, because we're still talking about innocent human beings here who have a God-given right to life, and any one of us is deserving of that protection at any stage of our existence. Our goal in the pro-life movement was never to have a patchwork of states with some protecting life while others destroy it. Now, to switch topics briefly, Melania Trump is apparently coming out with a memoir defending so-called abortion rights. I'm kind of shocked, but kind of not, right? Now, this is curious timing, being that we are about 30 days away from Election Day. So just to quickly summarize my thoughts, here's what I posted on Twitter this week. Melania Trump coming out as pro-abortion is sad, anti-woman, anti-family, pro-death, right? Let's call it for what it is, and un-American. Unfortunately, she isn't different from other first ladies. Still, endorsing this modern-day Holocaust is no excuse. Get it together, Trump team. We can do better. Now, what this kind of all comes down to is voting this November. If you're like me and always vote pro-life first, because life is our first and most foundational right, it's clear to me who the more pro-life ticket is by far. However, I think we need to figure out how to hold the GOP's feet to the fire, really everyone's feet to the fire, while cheering on the good that we hear. It is a tough line to walk, but I'm here for it. We got to figure it out. Let's keep educating people, serving mothers in crisis, saving lives, and gradually ending abortion. And yes, let's figure out how to get there as soon as possible. All right, well, that's hot take number one. Thank you all so much again for joining me for another quick episode of the Lauren Musica Show. I hope you'll join me next Friday for another episode at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Have a great week, everyone.